Thomas was not the only disciple who doubted. In the Gospel of Mark, those who visited the Easter tomb, they found it empty and they ran away. Just ran away, totally unsure of what had happened and just scared out of their wits, and that's how the story ends. In the Gospel of John, you might remember this from the reading last Sunday. In the Gospel of John, Mary Magdalene saw Jesus but didn't recognize him. She evidently couldn't have picked the resurrected Christ out of a lineup. In the Gospel of Luke, a number of women, they went to the tomb and discovered it to be empty. Angels appeared to them and announced that Jesus had been raised from the dead. But when the women returned to the others, to Peter and James and John and the rest, and when they told them what had happened, the men, they dismissed their story as, quote, an idle tale, silly women's talk. And even after two others came with reports of a sighting, they said they'd seen Jesus walking on the road, still the disciples, at least the male disciples, they still were not convinced. They all wanted to see Jesus and see Jesus for themselves. And when they did see him, when they did finally see him, they just thought he was a ghost. In the Gospel of Matthew, the apostles gathered around the resurrected Jesus. The scripture says they worshiped him, but they doubted. They worshiped him, but they doubted. Jesus was there. He was right there in front of them, alive when he was not supposed to be alive. They could see him with their own eyes. And what they saw was breathtaking enough to bring them to their knees. They bowed their hearts and they bowed themselves before Jesus. And while they did so, they doubted. This puts some things in perspective. Even those who saw Jesus, who were with him, who could smell God on his breath, even they doubted. In the moment, they doubted. When Jesus asked Thomas, "Have you believed just because you've seen me?" Actually, the only honest answer that either he or any of the apostles could have given was, sort of. Seeing was not believing. Not for them, not for any of them, not quite. Seeing was only sort of believing. They looked at him and they exclaimed, "My Lord and my God." But there was still this voice in their heads that kept right on whispering, "Really? How could belief possibly be easy for us when it wasn't easy for the ones who had it easy?" Those of us living 2,000 years later, whose belief is maybe sometimes a bit iffy, I think we're fine. They worshiped him, but they doubted. These two things can go together. These two things which don't seem to go together can go together. They did then, they can now. You can sing the hymns and sometimes tear up singing the hymns and still wonder, is anyone actually up there listening? You can pray and not really know what praying does or know if praying does anything. You can come to church and not be totally clear about why you're coming to church. Jesus didn't scold Thomas or scold any of the others in any of the other stories. And when he went on to say, Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have come to believe. I kind of read that the same way I do when he says, blessed are the poor, and blessed are you who mourn. Blessed are you when people revile you. You know, these are not necessarily states we're supposed to be aspiring to. Jesus just names the hardest realities of the human condition and promises us that God's compassion reaches into them. And Jesus acknowledges the questions we have about faith and promises us that God's compassion reaches into them. They worshiped him, but they doubted. In point of fact, there is only a hair's breadth of difference between worship and doubt. Both of them are ways of not knowing something for sure. Both worship and doubt are ways of living with some pretty critical missing information. Because it's not possible to get our minds around God. God is pretty big. God is bigger than we are. There's always more to God than we could ever see or know or even conceive of. And there's no proof. There's no proving anything about God or prayer or miracles or the resurrection. There's only faith. Faith which always stands on wobbling knees. Faith which often feels more like uncertainty. Worship and doubt are responses to this same uncertainty about God. Worship says, can it be? Doubt says, but it can't be. And those two things, saying, can it be? And saying, it can't be. Those two things are almost the same thing. Almost. The difference is just in how we hold ourselves. How we hold ourselves before this uncertainty. Do we adopt a posture of openness toward what can never be known for sure? Or do we close ourselves off to it? Do we lean in to the mystery or step back? The disciples, they seem to do both, and to do both at once, even. There wasn't for them like any one great leap of faith. It was something more like a lurching back and forth between faith and faithlessness, between worship and doubt. Or maybe it's better to think of it in terms of a single, more integrated way of being. Maybe it's better to think in terms of worshiping, but a little doubtfully, or doubting, but a little worshipfully. Both of those feel honest and right to me. Both of those feel like pretty good descriptions of awe to me, actually. Awe is that amazing, flooding feeling when somehow we experience ourselves to be big and small at the same time. When we lose ourselves but find ourselves in something greater than ourselves. When we know everything and we know nothing. When suddenly everything makes sense and nothing makes sense anymore. And we're shaken but steadied, humbled yet exalted. You know, that's a lot. That's a lot going on inside of us. Awe is dynamic and destabilizing like that. Sometimes it can come out a little more like worship, and sometimes it can come out a little more like doubt, but I'm inclined to think that it has less to do with any choice we make in the moment than just what we happen to have for breakfast that day. We can marvel and we can question. And so long as that leads to more and always more marveling and questioning, so long as our worshiping doubtfully or doubting worshipfully, so long as that opens us up and doesn't close things off, I think we're fine. And I think here's what it's like to be alive to this awe. We can bow low in prayer or looking into a microscope. Or we can stand tall. And I don't think I'm the only one to have done so this week. We can stand staring up at the sky, wondering, literally lost in space. I have been living in a state of sort of low-grade astonishment since the Artemis launch. Definitely very in touch with my 6-year-old self who could tell you exactly where every planet was in the solar system and map out the night sky in great detail. Definitely feeling that moon joy, as they said, the moon awe, the images of a crescent earth, the images of all of us, of all this, all the life there has ever been, and all the music there has ever been, and all the love there has ever been there in something that looks like it's the size of a fingernail clipping. And those images of the earth setting like the sun over the surface of the moon, those images of the light the darkness shall not overcome, those images of the light the moon wore like a halo. There may have been some tears. And the images of the Artemis crew wearing those cardboard sunglasses you can get at CVS before the solar eclipse, the pictures of them laughing and just snapping a selfie together, this simple, ordinary warmth and goodness of humanity that shone almost defiantly against what the astronauts themselves described as cold nothingness. That really got me. One of them, Victor Glover, shared, maybe you heard him. He said, as we get close to the farthest point from Earth and continue to unlock the mysteries of the cosmos, I'd like to remind you of one of the important mysteries on Earth, and that's love. Christ said, in response to what was the greatest command, he said that it was to love God with all you are. And he also, being a great teacher, said the second is equal to it, and that is to love your neighbor as yourself. And so, as we prepare to go out of radio communication, we're still going to feel your love from Earth. And to all of you down on Earth, we love you from the moon. I actually think it's pretty extraordinary. I mean, the first time, the farthest we'd ever been from the Earth, and this time too, these scientists are up there, and all they can do is just quote Scripture. I think Thomas and any of the other disciples standing before the risen Christ, confronted by such a sight, I think they might have said what Victor Glover went on to say. Humans probably have not evolved to see what we're seeing. It's truly hard to describe. It's amazing. Or what one of the other astronauts, Reed Wiseman, said. No matter how long we look at this, our brains are not processing the image in front of us. We're going to need to invent some new words. gratitude for all that we have no words for, the morning offering will be given and received.